Hi everyone, welcome back to LinguaDiscovery. I'm Josh, and today we're diving into a fascinating linguistic experiment that aimed to unite the world, Esperanto. So, what is Esperanto? In simple terms, it's the most widely spoken constructed language in the world today. Esperanto was created by a Polish-Jewish ophthalmologist named L. Zamenhof in the late 19th century, 1887 to be precise. The idea behind it was quite bold. Zamenhof wanted to develop a universal second language that could help foster peace and understanding between people from different nations. Imagine a language that transcends borders, cultural differences, and politics. Esperanto was envisioned as an easy-to-learn language that anyone, regardless of their native tongue, could pick up. So, why exactly did Zamenhof create Esperanto? Well, if you think back to the time period, Europe in the late 1800s was an incredibly diverse but politically fractured place. Multiple empires, nations, and ethnic groups often clashed, and Zamenhof grew up in a region that was particularly diverse, Białystok, a town in what is now Poland, but which at the time was part of the Russian Empire. Here, Zamenhof saw firsthand how language barriers contributed to social tensions. People spoke Polish, Yiddish, Russian, and German, but communication across these lines was difficult. Zamenhof believed that many of these conflicts could have been avoided if everyone had access to a common, neutral language, a bridge, so to speak. He based Esperanto on a variety of European languages, borrowing vocabulary primarily from Romance languages like French and Italian, while its grammar was greatly simplified and influenced by Slavic languages. The key here was simplicity. For starters, its grammar is highly regular. There are no irregular verbs or confusing exceptions to memorize. Each word is built in a logical, consistent way. For example, all nouns end in O, adjectives end in A, and verbs are conjugated the same way regardless of subject. This regularity eliminates many of the headaches that language learners face. Pronunciation is straightforward as well. Every letter is always pronounced the same way, and words are spelled exactly how they sound. If you've ever been frustrated by silent letters in English, you'll appreciate Esperanto's simplicity. To expand a bit on one of the most unique and useful aspects of Esperanto, let's dive deeper into its flexible system for creating new words. The language is built around a core set of root words, to which you can easily add prefixes and suffixes to form related words. For instance, from the root word amic, meaning friend, you can create amica, friendly, amicino, female friend, or mal amico, enemy. This system allows speakers to express a wide range of ideas without having to memorize a massive amount of vocabulary. It's almost like playing with building blocks. Once you understand the basic rules, you can construct new words on the fly, which makes learning and using the language both intuitive and creative. This feature is one reason Esperanto has remained popular with language enthusiasts worldwide. Now, let's address the big question. Did Esperanto succeed? The short answer is it did, but not quite in the way Zamenhof had envisioned. Esperanto grew and attracted a dedicated following, and today it's estimated that there are anywhere between 100,000 to 2 million Esperanto speakers worldwide. Some even speak it as their native language, but despite its loyal community, Esperanto never truly emerged as the global lingua franca that Zamenhof hoped for. There are several reasons for this. For one, consider the time period in which Esperanto was born. Zamenhof published his first book on the language in 1887, just before the explosion of nationalism and World War I. National identities were becoming stronger, not weaker. While Esperanto offered a neutral solution, it struggled to gain traction in a world where people were increasingly protective of their languages and cultures. Imagine trying to pitch a universal language when empires were clashing and nations were asserting their dominance. The timing just wasn't ideal. Geopolitics also played a significant role. One of the more ambitious moments in Esperanto's history was when it was proposed as a working language for the League of Nations in the 1920s. The idea was that Esperanto could serve as a neutral, international language to promote diplomacy and global cooperation. This would have been a monumental step for the language, potentially giving it official international recognition. However, France vetoed the proposal. The reason behind France's veto was rooted in national pride and the fear of losing French as the dominant diplomatic language. At the time, French was the international language of diplomacy, and France, being protective of its cultural influence, did not want to cede that status to a new constructed language like Esperanto. World War II and the Cold War that followed created a global climate that wasn't friendly to internationalism, especially a language designed to unite people across ideological divides. Under Stalin's rule in the Soviet Union, Esperanto speakers were persecuted as the language was seen as a potential tool for espionage and Western influence. On the other side of the political spectrum, Adolf Hitler also harbored deep hostility toward Esperanto, a stance largely influenced by his anti-Semitism. In his manifesto, Mein Kampf, Hitler singled out Esperanto as a potential tool of Jewish conspiracies to achieve global domination. He was particularly suspicious of Esperanto because of its Jewish creator, Zamenhof. In Nazi ideology, anything connected to Jewish identity was viewed with deep suspicion, and Esperanto, with its internationalist ideals, was seen as a threat to the regime's nationalist and xenophobic agenda. As a result, Esperanto speakers were persecuted under the Nazi regime, with many being arrested, sent to concentration camps, or worse. After World War II, English slowly replaced French dominance in the world as the United States became a dominant global power. English, particularly through the spread of American culture, science, and technology, started to take on the role that Esperanto had hoped to fill. English effectively became the global lingua franca by the mid-20th century, leaving little room for Esperanto to grow into that role. In addition, if we examine how Esperanto worked in terms of what languages it sampled, there are also some limitations. Despite its goal of being a neutral international language, the language is primarily based on European languages, especially Romance and Germanic tongues, which makes it much easier to learn for speakers of those languages. However, for people whose native languages come from non-European language families, such as Asian, African, or American indigenous languages, Esperanto can still feel somewhat foreign. Its vocabulary and structure don't reflect the linguistic diversity of the world, which raises the question of how inclusive it truly is. As a result, while Esperanto simplifies many things, it doesn't fully break away from the Eurocentric bias found in traditional international languages like English or French. Despite these setbacks, Esperanto has proven to be remarkably resilient. Today, it enjoys a thriving global community. There are Esperanto-speaking groups, online courses, and even conferences where people gather to speak the language. The advent of the internet has been particularly beneficial for Esperanto, allowing speakers to connect across the globe in ways that Zamenhof could only dream of. In 2015, Esperanto made a bit of a comeback on platforms like Duolingo, where thousands of people began learning it. Why? Well, it's simple, fun, and for many language enthusiasts, it offers a unique insight into linguistic structure. Esperanto even has its own Wikipedia edition, and there are radio broadcasts, podcasts, and YouTube channels entirely in Esperanto. One of the most interesting aspects of Esperanto today is its role as a cultural bridge, even if it didn't become the lingua franca of diplomacy or business. Esperanto culture, yes, it's a thing, includes a wealth of original music, literature, and even films. It's developed its own distinct identity, which is quite remarkable for a language that was intentionally constructed from scratch. Esperanto was an ambitious project born from an idealistic vision of world peace and unity. While it didn't replace English or other global languages, it has achieved something quite special. A devoted and global community of speakers who continue to keep the language alive and evolving. So, While Esperanto might not be the world's most widely spoken language, it's certainly the most spoken constructed one, and its influence on global linguistic culture is undeniable. And that's all for today. If you're curious about Esperanto or have even considered learning it yourself, let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching this episode of LinguaDiscovery, and I'll see you in the next one.